Hello, this is Jordan.
And this is Quinn.
We are so incredibly glad you are joining us today. If you've been following our ongoing discussions, you know we constantly explore the absolute cutting edge of apiculture, environmental monitoring, and, well, just general hive health.
Yeah, and today's analysis is something highly specific. Honestly, I think it solves a massive operational mystery.
Oh, absolutely. It is a mystery that I have literally been banging my head against for years.
I can only imagine.
Yeah. So to set the stage for you, I want you to just picture this scenario. You're out in the apiaries in North Dakota. We run a large-scale commercial operation.
Right.
We are managing thousands upon thousands of colonies, primarily for honey production and commercial pollination.
Right.
I mean, I am talking about a massive logistical scale where, margins really matter.
Every single frame of honey counts at that scale.
Exactly. So you're out there in the field, and the weather is absolutely beautiful. The sun is shining. The temperature is dead center of the sweet spot, and there's barely a breeze.
Sounds like a perfect day for the bees.
It should be. You check your clipboard, the pollen sub is completely topped off for them, and by all logic, the hive should be humming like a well-oiled machine.
Yeah.
But then you step closer, you look really closely at the hive entrances, and the bees are just going completely haywire.
It has to be such a bizarre, almost unsettling phenomenon to witness. Especially when the environmental conditions appear so optimal on the surface, you expect a certain rhythm.
Unsettling is the perfect word for it. You see foragers flying erratically, acting almost, I don't know, dizzy as they approach the landing board. There's unexplainable drifting happening everywhere.
And for those listening who might not manage hives, drifting is when bees accidentally fly into the wrong boxes, right?
Yes, exactly. They join neighboring hives instead of returning to their own colony. For a commercial beekeeper doing intensive queen breeding or trying to maximize the seasonal honey flow, drifting is an absolute nightmare.
Because it acts as a disease vector.
Oh, a huge one. It spreads pathogens rapidly down the line. It drastically unbalances colony populations, leaving some boxes empty and others just totally overcrowded. And it just doesn't make any logical sense when the sun is shining and the wind is calm. I used to just stand in the grass, scratch my head, and wonder what invisible force was messing with my foragers.
Well, it turns out the force is quite literally invisible. Today, we're looking at a stack of recent entomological research papers, historical biology studies, and real-time tracking data to figure out exactly how invisible weather patterns are dictating the health of our hives.
Which perfectly ties into our previous conversation. Last time we talked about the live bee weather dashboard that analyzes real-time weather from your local weather station to track how conditions are impacting colony flight, hive health, and honey production.
Which serves as a phenomenal baseline tool for anyone managing colonies, whether that's 2 boxes in a backyard or 2,000 in a commercial yard.
Absolutely. But today, we're taking it a massive step further because of a specialized tracking tool we recently started analyzing. And this completely explains that haywire bee phenomenon I just described.
The Magneto-Bee tracker.
Yes, the Magneto-Bee tracker. This is a real-time geomagnetic monitor specifically designed for honeybee navigation health. Putting my practical, boots-on-the-ground beekeeper hat on, what I genuinely appreciate about this tool is that it is heavily mobile-friendly.
Which is crucial when you're out in the field.
Oh, 100%. When you're out in the work truck, miles away from a desktop computer, just driving between yards in the dirt and the dust, you can pull this right up on your phone and get immediate data.
That accessibility is a game changer.
It really is. For those of you listening who want to follow along and see exactly what we're looking at, you can find this tool by going to Manuka, woundscience.org.
The science behind what you experienced in that apiary in North Dakota and what this tracker actually monitors is honestly one of the most fascinating intersections of biology and planetary physics you will ever come across.
It still blows my mind a little bit.
I know, right? To understand why your bees were drifting on a perfectly sunny day, you have to fundamentally rethink how they navigate. We often assume bees rely solely on the position of the sun or, visual landmarks like trees and buildings.
Right, line of sight stuff.
Exactly. And while those are definitely factors, there is a deeply ingrained microscopic navigational system at play here. Honeybees actually have tiny magnetite crystals located right inside their abdomens.
Wait, actual crystals? Let me stop you there because that just sounds like pure science fiction.
It really does.
How does a biological organism grow a geological mineral inside its body? And for that matter, how did scientists even figure that out without using microscopic metal detectors on the bees?
That is a great question. It genuinely sounds made up, but this is heavily documented, peer-reviewed entomological research. The foundational studies actually go back several decades. There was a landmark paper published in the journal Science back in 1978 by researchers Gold, Kirschvink, and Duffys, proving that bees possess magnetic remnants.
Hold on, magnetic remnants. For those of us who aren't planetary physicists, does that basically mean the bees themselves become tiny, permanent magnets?
Essentially, yes. Magnetic remnants means that the biological tissue retains a magnetic field. And they didn't use microscopic metal detectors. They used incredibly sensitive magnetometers in controlled laboratory settings to measure localized sections of the bee's anatomy.
Wow.
Yeah, they found iron oxide magnetite concentrated in the abdomen. Then, later on in 1985, scientists Walker and Bitterman published further research demonstrating how honeybees have conditioned behavioral responses to localized magnetic fields.
Okay, so what this all means for you, standing out there looking at your commercial colonies, is that these tiny magnetite crystals act exactly like an internal compass.
Precisely. They are navigating by magnetism.
Break that down for the listener a bit more. How does that compass actually function in the real world when a forager leaves the safety of the box to go look for nectar?
Think of the Earth's natural magnetic field as a constantly broadcasting GPS signal. The bees are biologically tuned into this specific frequency.
Okay, I'm with you.
When a young bee emerges and performs her initial orientation flight, hovering in front of the hive in figure eights, or when an older forager maps her route to a distant field of clover, she is actively calibrating her internal magnetite against the Earth's natural magnetic background.
So she's basically syncing her internal GPS to the Earth's grid.
Exactly. That omnipresent GPS signal allows her to know exactly where she is in three-dimensional space and, most importantly, how to get back to her specific hive entrance. But just like any broadcast signal we use in our daily lives, it is highly vulnerable to interference.
Meaning space weather.
Yes, solar activity, specifically solar flares, coronal mass ejections, and geomagnetic storms. These events create massive disturbances in the Earth's magnetic field.
So millions of miles away, the sun throws a tantrum, ejects a bunch of energy, and it directly messes with the Earth's magnetic field here on the ground.
That is the perfect way to visualize it. If the Earth's baseline magnetic field is a crystal clear GPS signal, solar interference acts exactly like severe static on a radio broadcast.
Oh, I like that analogy.
It creates what the scientific community calls magnetic noise or magnetic smog. When that static gets loud enough during a solar storm, it completely drowns out the bee's natural GPS. The magnetite crystals in their abdomens simply cannot lock onto a stable directional heading.
Which means they are essentially flying blind.
Totally blind. It becomes incredibly hard, if not impossible, for them to filter out that solar noise and find their way home.
Which perfectly explains the erratic flying and the terrifying drifting I see in the yards. They literally cannot hear the magnetic signal of their own front door because the radio static is too loud.
Yes. And furthermore, it gets even more impactful when you consider how bees communicate inside the dark hive. Think about the mechanics of the waggle dance.
Right, the famous dance.
When a scout bee finds a highly productive nectar source, she comes back to the combs and performs a figure-8 dance to give the other foragers the exact flight coordinates.
I think we need to explain it like I'm 5 for this specific part. How does magnetic static ruin a dance inside a dark box?
Okay, imagine trying to draw a highly detailed map for your friend while you are standing on a rapidly spinning merry-go-round.
That sounds like a disaster.
Exactly. The waggle dance relies entirely on the bee's body angle relative to gravity and the Earth's magnetic field. If the magnetic field is shifting and buzzing due to solar static, her internal orientation is completely wrong.
So she's giving bad directions.
Very bad directions. She thinks she is dancing a path straight to the flowers, but she is actually sending thousands of your foragers to an empty field 2 miles away from the actual nectar.
Yeah.
When the magnetic signal is clear, what the tracker calls absolute calm, the geometry of that waggle dance is perfectly accurate. But when that magnetic smog rolls in, the coordinates she shares become drastically distorted. She is actively giving the rest of the hive bad directions.
That is just wild to visualize. Thousands of bees burning precious energy flying to an empty patch of dirt because the sun had a flare.
It's a massive waste of colony resources.
So what does this all mean for us practically? How do we measure this static on the radio, and more importantly, how do we manage our operations around it? This is where the Magneto-Bee tracker becomes an absolutely essential piece of field equipment. It pulls data directly from the NOAA Space Weather Prediction Center, specifically using something called the planetary KP index.
Right, the KP index is the established global standard for measuring these disturbances in the Earth's magnetic field.
And it updates frequently, doesn't it?
Yes, it updates every 3 hours, which provides a highly accurate rolling forecast that you can actually plan an agricultural day around.
And it runs on a scale from 0 to 9. For a commercial operation managing logistics, or even if you are just managing a few backyard hives and want to optimize your honey production for the season, this scale acts as your vital navigation forecast. Let's break down these numbers for you so you know exactly what you're looking at when you pull the tracker up on your phone in the field.
Let's start at the bottom of the scale.
Yeah, the low end of the scale is our bread and butter. KP0 is labeled absolute calm. The magnetic field is perfectly still. Then you move to KP1, which is perfect clarity.
KP1 is really the gold standard, pristine environment. If you are tracking the life cycle of your colony, KP1 is the absolute best time for young, newly emerged bees to perform their critical orientation flights.
Because there's no static.
Exactly. Because the environment is clear, they can map their home location perfectly without a single ounce of distortion to confuse them later.
After that, KP2 is optimal navigation, and KP3 is stable flight. At these low to moderate levels, the waggle dance accuracy inside the box is exceptionally high, the honey is flowing, and the foragers are operating at absolute peak efficiency.
It's business as usual.
Right. But here's where my authoritative, skeptical of fluff side has to come out and give some very real advice. Things change rapidly as that KP number creeps up, and it costs beekeepers real money. Because this tool is mobile-friendly, you can literally be standing in the apiary, see the bees acting slightly off, check your phone, and realize the KP index is actively climbing.
Yes, the behavioral shifts become highly measurable. When we hit KP4, the tracker legitimately labels this navigation caution.
At KP4, the environment starts getting fuzzy. You might see a little hesitation at the hive entrance, bees taking an extra second to land. But when we cross into KP5, which correlates to a G1 minor geomagnetic storm on the NOAA scale, the tracker flags this as minor stress.
And this is where things start getting messy.
This is exactly where that drifting I mentioned earlier becomes highly noticeable. The younger, more sensitive foragers start accidentally joining the wrong hives because the magnetic noise is thickening around them. KP6 escalates to moderate drift, and then we hit a critical threshold at KP7, which is a G3 storm, labeled major interference.
Chemically and biologically speaking, at KP7, the foragers are struggling significantly to filter out that solar noise. They are actively fighting the static just to stay airborne and oriented. The biological toll on their energy reserves is massive.
And as a beekeeper managing margins, this is where you see a measurable physical drop in hive productivity. The workers are disoriented, the directions being shared inside the box via the waggle dance are compromised, and the nectar gathering efficiency of the entire colony plummets. It is a wasted day for the bees.
And it doesn't stop there.
No, it doesn't. Then we have KP8, severe disruption leading up to the absolute worst-case operational scenario, KP9.
The G5 storm, navigation collapse.
Navigation collapse. When the tracker shows a KP9, I need you to listen to me carefully. You must alter your management protocol immediately. At this level, the solar storm is at maximum intensity, and your bee's internal compass is effectively blinded. The foragers are already overwhelmingly disoriented, just trying to survive the day and find their way back to the box.
It's a true crisis for the colony.
My strict professional advice. During a KP9 navigation collapse, you must completely avoid moving your hives to new locations. Do not load them onto trucks. Do not shift them to a new pollination contract. Furthermore, do not crack those boxes open for routine inspections.
Just leave the lids on.
Yes. If you pull the lid off, disturb the hives, and force guard bees and workers into the air when they are already blinded to their home signal, you risk massive colony loss. The soldiers caught out in the field might not make it back, and the ones you force out of the box will just get swept away and lost in the grass. Leave them alone until the storm passes. It is not worth the financial or biological cost.
It forces a profound shift in perspective, doesn't it? You could be standing in a field looking up at a crystal blue sky, feeling a gentle breeze. But scientifically, structurally, there is a hurricane of magnetic noise happening that only the bees can feel.
It's terrifying, honestly.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, it explains so much more than just colony management and avoiding drifting. It directly impacts the biochemical makeup of the final product those bees are manufacturing.
Which brings us to a really crucial connection for the listener. Why does this matter beyond just keeping bees in the correct box? Well, it comes down to the quality, the volume, and the actual medicinal potency of the honey itself.
Precisely. Let's look at the science of nectar concentration. When you have sustained geomagnetic disruption, say a 5-day stretch of high Kate numbers hitting 6 or 7, it severely limits the foraging efficiency of the colony.
They just aren't flying as much.
Right. If they are struggling to navigate, they are not taking the most direct routes to the flowers. They are spending significantly more energy flying, they are getting lost, and overall they are bringing far less nectar back to the hive.
And nectar collection volume is the whole ballgame. If stable navigation allows for maximum efficient nectar collection, that directly dictates the concentration of specific compounds in the finished honey over the course of a short blooming season. Specifically, we are talking about methylglyoxal, or MgO.
MgO is the naturally occurring organic compound that gives high-grade Manuka honey its unique therapeutic and antibacterial properties.
It's the good stuff.
Yes, the good stuff. The concentration of MgO in the final cured honey is deeply dependent on the bees gathering massive amounts of nectar from highly specific floral sources during a very short blooming window. We are talking about the Leptospermum scoparium plant.
That's the specific Manuka bush native to New Zealand, right?
Correct. And this bush only blooms for a few weeks a year. If a severe solar storm hits during the peak of that short Manuka bloom, the bees are grounded or highly inefficient. The nectar collection drops drastically, and the resulting MgO concentration in that entire season's harvest will be significantly lower.
That brings up a massive operational hurdle for producers. So if you are a potency-conscious consumer, someone who uses medical-grade or high MgO honey for specific health reasons, you directly benefit from producers who actually monitor this environmental data.
Absolutely. You want data-driven harvesting?
Exactly. You want your honey sourced from producers who are looking at these stressors, including solar weather, upstream of the harvest.
It serves as a perfect example of how environmental terroir isn't just about soil quality and rainfall amounts. It is about space weather, too.
I thought I'd say space weather terroir, but here we are.
The sources and research we are looking at today actually highlight how this stable navigation and active environmental monitoring result in incredibly potent products. They provide a few clinical examples of potency-verified UMF-licensed honey that represent what happens when bees are able to forage optimally during clear magnetic weather.
Let's actually talk about UMF for a second, because the grading system can be confusing if you don't know what you are looking for. UMF stands for Unique Manuka Factor, and it requires a strict license because it guarantees the purity, quality, and exact chemical markers of the honey, including that MgO content.
It's a very rigid standard.
Very rigid. And to be abundantly clear to you listening, we're looking at these strictly as clinical examples of high-quality MgO honey that are produced under rigorous standards, not as a sales pitch. First, the data points to something like the Wetherspoon MgO 400 Plus game.
That's a great baseline example.
Yeah, this is considered a solid entry-level daily dose. It is a monofloral raw Manuka, meaning the bees were efficiently targeting that single nectar source, the Leptospermum scoparium plant. It has traceable harvest data, making it perfect for daily wellness routines.
Then, as you move up the scale of chemical potency, which again requires even more efficient foraging and massive nectar concentration, you look at an extra tier like the Manuka Health MgO 600 Plus is.
That's quite a jump in numbers.
It is. This elevated level of potency is a distinct step up for therapeutic use. According to the clinical literature we reviewed, this specific MgO concentration is heavily studied in presentations for things like skin barrier repair and for internal use during active immune challenge periods. The much higher MgO content provides a remarkably more robust biological response.
And finally, for the absolute top tier of what the research is discussing, you have the Wetherspoon MgO 850 Plus A. This is a highly concentrated therapeutic-grade raw Manuka.
The 850 Plus is serious business.
It really is. It features independently verified pollen purity sourced from single-source apiaries. Getting an MgO rating of 850 plus requires an absolute perfect storm in a good way of floral availability, impeccable colony health, and, as we now understand, crystal clear geomagnetic navigation.
So the bees can maximize every single minute of that short nectar flow.
Exactly. It emphasizes a beautiful reality.
Yep.
When you hold a jar of high MgO honey in your hands, you are holding the direct result of a million tiny, perfectly executed flights that were entirely dependent on the quietness of the sun.
It is a remarkable, delicate chain of cosmic and biological events.
It really reframes everything. It completely changes how I view my commercial apiaries out in the Dakotas, and I know it changes how you will look at that jar of honey sitting in your pantry.
It definitely adds a layer of appreciation.
Now, before we wrap up today's agricultural analysis, I have to give you a quick tease for what is coming next. The Magneto-Bee tracker is an absolute game changer for field management, but it is actually just one part of a much larger suite of tools available on that exact same site.
Right, at manukawoundscience.org.
Yes, manukawoundscience.org. The data integration on that platform is phenomenal to look at from a scientific perspective.
The depth of metrics they track is staggering.
It really is. Next time, we're going to be exploring their Hive Ops Center. If the Magneto-Bee tracker serves as your vital navigation forecast, the Hive Ops Center is the ultimate digital assistant for your entire apiary operation.
Which is going to be incredibly useful for someone like you managing thousands of hives.
Oh, I cannot wait. It aggregates all these local real-time conditions to tell you, with data-driven precision, exactly when your bees are safe to fly, when they're actively curing and making honey, and when it is absolutely best to step back, put the hive tool away, and leave the box completely undisturbed.
It takes the guesswork and the financial risk out of commercial management.
It absolutely does. I am thrilled to dive into it.
I cannot wait to look into the data architecture of the Hive Ops Center. But for today, as we close out this session, I want to leave you with something to really mull over. We've just explored how tiny, invisible fluctuations in space, weather solar flares occurring millions of miles away from us, can dictate the precise daily movements of a microscopic insect here on Earth.
It is wild to think about.
And not only that, but it can fundamentally alter the chemical potency of the food they produce.
It really makes you pause and consider the broader implications.
It raises such a profound, lingering question. If space weather is having this measurable, daily financial impact on our honeybees, what other invisible forces of nature are quietly shaping the agriculture, the ecosystems, and the complex food systems that we take for granted every single day?
That is a wild, sobering thought to end on. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll catch you on the next one.